bottle.
Alrighty, I just had to play the little bit of the Allegri picture gag because this, unfortunately, is the face that we get to see, and I'm going to follow it up with this right now. So I'm going to get rid of his face so you guys can see us. Welcome to the Milan post-game show. I am your host, Dash, with my co-host over here, Weston. How are you feeling? Hopefully it's not a little bit too terrible.
Yeah, I mean, can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sad reality is the loss hurts maybe a little less when you kind of expect it to a small degree. So I don't want to say we're getting numb to it, but yeah, it's certainly it hurts the way it should.
Yeah, no, for sure. This one stung. There was a couple of losses that, it left a bad taste in my mouth. But this specific game against Milan, it's just the goals that we conceded, the way that we played, and it's like I understand everyone's frustrations at Allegri, but sometimes for me right now, I'm just kind of mad at the players because I've got some shots, some images of some really bad miscues with some of our players on the pitch, and it's just like, man, I just like I don't know. It's just like I'm sitting here like, oh, like no. I mean, Twitter. I think we've got content for days on Twitter, definitely.
Well, you want to talk about the share of blame between the management and the players. This was the first time ever that Pioli beat Allegri. It was his 20th attempt and the first time Pioli got a win against Allegri. And I think a lot of these individual errors probably stemmed from the fact that Pioli was clever enough to put a 4-3-3 against our flat 4-4-2. And you saw the midfield get overloaded because you had essentially those three players in the middle and Locatelli getting a little overpowered. But then, a lot of these individual errors for me come down to motivation as well. I think they showed more belief than we did. And again, I start to wonder how Allegri is motivating the players as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on the belief aspect of it. So this is interesting. So I'll get your take on it. A lot of people were slamming Locatelli today. I know if some of you folks, if you guys watched Zio Beppe earlier today, G Just Juve, I know he was mentioning that Locatelli did not look sharp today. Juve Twitter as well was criticizing Locatelli. To be honest, for me, it's like I think there's probably another player that did a lot worse than Locatelli. I think I'm going to say Vlahovic just because of the pass that he gave or the stellar assist he gave to Brahim Diaz. But I don't know. I mean, what's your thoughts on Manuel? I think so. Dave and I talked about it on Friday, where we thought that Locatelli's a good player, but I think in the current roster that we have, I think he'll have more impact as a substitute than a starter per se. But again, today he was played out of position. He was played in the Regista role, didn't play the box-to-box role. But anyways, what's your thoughts on Loca?
Yeah, I mean, he certainly has been disappointing for us. We saw what he could do in the Euros. We saw what he could do at Sassuolo and even Milan, of course, while playing for them, scored some bangers against us. And again, I just start to think that we're not getting the best out of him because of the system we're playing. And you look at him, you look at McKinney, you look at Vlahovic. When so many of our players are not living up to their potential, there's so much smoke. There has to be some sort of fire, and I definitely don't want to take away the individual responsibility from these professionals. But you just have to think that he can be better than this, and we need to find the way to bring that out.
No, I gotcha for sure. So I'm gonna pull up a little bit of our match recap that is done by FotMob. Again, we're not sponsored by them. We just like using their stuff. Pretty solid website. So just share this bad boy real quick. So just kind of going over some of the statistics that we got. So again, 2-0 full time. Goal by Tomori at the 45th minute, and then a follow up by Diaz. So looking at the stats here, once we scroll down, see if I can pull those up. There we go. I'll go into the player ratings after, but according to FotMob, so we had 60% of possession in Milan's 40%. Their expected goals, XGs, I think that's one of the weirdest calculations nowadays. I still haven't fully mastered that yet. Milan with the 2.27, they scored 2 goals. Us with a 0.77, didn't really do anything or score much. Milan had 21 total shots, 3 big chances to our 10 total shots and 0 big chances. Milan had 1 big chance. We had, or big chance missed. They had 1 big chance missed. We had 0 big chances missed, but you can't miss a big chance if you don't have a big chance. Haha. So in the accurate passes, Milan had 250 passes, 72% pass accuracy to our 463 and 85% pass accuracy. So this is going to open up an interesting conversation. Once I get through this, I'll talk about it. But fouls committed 7-7. Technically should be 8-7 if somebody could call a foul properly. Um, had to throw that jab there. And then offsides, 1 offsides to our 0, and then 9 to 3 corners. And this is another thing I kind of want to touch on real quick. So the folks that watched our pregame yesterday, essentially we kind of gave you the 101 on how to beat Milan. High, lofty balls in the box, whether it be from using corners, free kicks, or even open play. We only had 3 the whole game, and we didn't even try to press any kind of air attack on Milan. The one chance that we had that was decent in the second half was a cross to Milik because Tomori can't read crosses at all. And unfortunately, Milik just couldn't finish it, but again, had a free open header, didn't capitalize on it. The clips that we showed you on Friday with Chelsea and Napoli, both teams threw a ball up in the air and had their players make a play and head that ball into the net. We did not attempt that. I don't know why. I don't know, unless, the Juve personal training staff or the entire tactics staff. Apparently, Turin Giants know something that they don't know. I mean, it's just one of those things where I don't understand how they missed that or even tried to make any kind of attempts like that. But that to me is just appalling. And to open up this conversation with the stats real quick, Milan didn't really play anything crazy. It was more so the way that they beat us was, again, miscues and a counterattack. I didn't see a Milan being, amazing 1-2 passes and cutting through us like butter or anything like that. Milan was kind of void of ideas from what I saw. I mean, we had a good, decent first half up until when we conceded, but most of the time you'd see Leao take shots from outside the box, Benacer take shots from outside the box. I think when Milan really kind of found their stride, for lack of a better term, was when they were up 2-0 and they were just kind of at that point, they're like, okay, we're just coasting. There's not really anything there. But the one thing that I did notice prior to the first goal, they didn't really have anything. It was more so like they just kind of sat back, tried forcing things from outside the box, and if they got a quick counter, they did. I thought Szczesny handled one counter attempt from Milan very well in the opening 15 minutes, where he saw that they were going to try to feed Leao, so he ran off his line and went prime Neuer to receive the ball and play the ball out. Uh, that was I thought in my head, I thought, hey, Juve studied the tape. They understood how Milan was going to come at them. I thought they did well defensively for that first half, that first spell. The one thing, again, I want to go at is Cuadrado again, just because I think he was probably the chink in the armor for that first half. Again, him coming out in the wing, one of the most uninspiring players on the right side of the pitch, whether he gets the ball, opens up his hand, does his weird little hand point for someone, and then by the time then Milan's already dropped back. The fact that we're opening up counterattacks with Cuadrado frustrates me a lot. We saw it against Maccabi Haifa, where Cuadrado just can't up the tempo. And then even when he took that ball, literally had 3 players unmanned in the back post. No pass, decides to take a shot with a 20-degree angle of even hitting that post. Misses it, ball goes out of bounds. Everyone's looking at him absolutely dumbfounded. The other thing, too, when I go into some of the shots, the images that I took of the game, Cuadrado is 100% to blame during that corner that Giroud got the ball. If you watch the angles that I show you guys and the way that Cuadrado attempted to defend that corner, you'd lose your mind. It was across, the ball was on his left side. Instead of using his left leg, he tries to move his right leg over to try to touch it, completely whiffs it, and then the ensuing reactions go in again. To me, kudos to Allegri for taking him out right after halftime. I mean, I would have done it sooner at that point. I would have done it right after that goal, but it's kind of frustrating to me that we started him in a crucial game for the season and not playing anything else or doing anything else. I understand DeShilio's injured, but again, you had Danilo playing as a right back. So we were playing a 4-4-2. I mean, at this point, I would have been okay with McKennie, and people will call me crazy for it, but like, come on, like Quadrado isn't offering anything on that side of the pitch. It just to me, it's like, what's the point of putting him on there? But you have any thoughts on this one? Because I've been going on a monologue.
Yeah, I mean, I think you made a good point in terms of Tamori being really shaky with crosses coming in the box. We saw him kind of stab at something against Chelsea and get caught out for that. But we could have played a 4-4-3 if we wanted to put more crosses in, and we didn't. We took out Kostic really early when we should have been pushing forward, and then we couldn't anymore. We're playing a 4-4-3 with Rabiot and McKinney on the wings, who aren't wingers. So these basic things, Allegri just seems to have no consistent plan for. It just seemed like he was throwing on players randomly. Then Sule comes on, who I know is a young player, but seeing those corners were not great corners, and I had to laugh at remembering Argentina basically calling him up just to cap time, and then
Yeah.
poor guy is kind of stuck trying to drag us back and is unable to do so. But why was Vlahovic coming off? Why were these attacking players coming off? Why were we counterattacking against a smaller club in Bologna and then dominating possession against a bigger club in Milan and not able to do anything with it? And I think we started pretty strong. The first part of the first half looked really good, but then we started to fade just enough. And that non-call on Quadrado being fouled led to that Milan goal on the brink of halftime, and we just couldn't recover. Again, the mentality wasn't there. And I think the thing that I keep going back to is if you scroll up a little bit on that screen
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
the unavailable section, yeah, right there, the bottom. We really have 5 out because Chiesa isn't listed simply because he's back in training, even though he's obviously not fit yet. There's that quote, and I saved it. I have it right here, where Allegri said, I mean, obviously it's translated, so the quote is not that direct of a quote. He says, quote, "This is a virtual Juventus. Try taking away 5 starters from Inter or Milan and we'll see if they struggle." All right, so he's basically excusing our poor results because we're missing key players, which I do think that missing Chiesa, Pogba, Di Maria hurt us, no doubt about it. But you look at the Milan side, they're missing 7 players, right? And Teo just squeaked back from injury. He was out for a little while. So the fact that we were unable to put up a fight against a club missing 7 players, especially after Allegri used that as his excuse, I think really is a huge sticking point for me. We can talk about formation all day. We can talk about personal errors all day. But like for like, we're just not getting the best out of our players like they are. And I think that's the overarching big picture issue here. You can moneyball all these specific positions and stats all day. But like I said, we tried one style against Bologna, we tried one style against Milan. We haven't won an away game since April,
Yeah.
which is terrifying. It's been a very, very, very long time since we've been able to put up a fight on the road. And again, to me, ultimately, I think that comes down to mentality, and it comes down to the team structure. And we just look devoid of ideas throwing on players, and we look devoid of ideas on the field, in our passing and our structure. And look, 60% possession, very little to show for it. I think that speaks for itself.
Yeah, it's that good old Pep Guardiola meme, but at least we had possession. Um, so the thing is, and we'll answer some of you guys in the chat too. We see you all you guys, Sharif, Bones, see you guys. We love you guys. It's just that excuse, like it's not even an excuse anymore. And like the others, about like, oh hey, we're missing starters, we're missing players. It's like, all right, dude. So is everybody else. No, there isn't a team on planet Earth that's going to have 100% everybody available. And like we can say, well, Di Maria was suspended and there goes our creativity. You can't have your creativity or you can't have your playmaking literally be dependent on a single 34-year-old player. That to me makes no sense. But here's like the real alarming stat is through his entire time here at Juve, Allegri has failed to beat a top 4 team, home or away. It's been draws and losses.
Hmm.
That is ridiculous. I'm not going to go too hard on the Allegri out train because let's be real here, he's not getting sacked, at least until the beginning of the World Cup, if the club does decide to sack him. Because we're not going to wake up tomorrow morning and then hear a bulletin saying that Massimiliano Allegri's been relieved of his duties. We're not going to see that. I don't see it, but it's frustrating because like I saw the team put in an effort, but then it's like they make a mistake and they've completely lost their sense of self. Like that corner, to me, it was like the team was busy arguing the foul after the fact that Milan scored, and the referee, yeah, it was an error by the referee's part. We're not going to say the referee was fine with it, but there's a point where you guys can whine and moan, or the players can whine and moan about the foul. It's not going to change the foul. Go out there and get it back. Like if they were that upset about the foul, use it as fuel. Come at Milan, punch him in the face. Metaphorically, of course, we're not condoning any physical altercations, but it's just that thing, man. It's just like it's like I'm watching a bunch of high schoolers that are finally playing competitive football for the first time of their lives, and they get scored, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know what to do." Or I don't know if you've ever played with like certain folks in like competitive leagues or leagues in general, where like they get one stupid call and then they just forget how to play after, or they just get so wrapped up in the emotion of the call. It's just I don't know. It's just mind numbing for me.
Yeah.
And
Well, and we touched on this before. It's like think about these three variables, right? We have the disconnect with maybe even four variables, right? Disconnect with the motivation. We have a disconnect with the tactical system. Then we have good, talented players physically unavailable. And then also we've had a lot of poor refereeing calls like this one that led to a goal and what happened in Salernitana. We're not strong enough to come back from all four of those things at the same time. Maybe we could be strong enough to come back from two of those things, or three of those things, even on a good season. But we just simply can't fight on all of those fronts at the same time. And that's why I think something needs to change, right? We're not going to be able to change the refereeing unless they somehow do some reformation of VAR camera angles because they're so embarrassed what happened in Salernitana. I don't know if that's going to happen. We're not going to be able to magically bring these players back from the dead when they're on the hospital bed. I think we've already sacked some of the physio back staff or something like that. But again, I don't really know how much room we actually have to change those things. If you look at what we can actually change, we can change the motivation and we can change the tactics. And those are two things that Allegri seems to be consciously refusing to do. Again, the Allegri out argument obviously has been beaten into the ground. So at this point, all we can do is wait for the players to come back. And that's kind of an unfortunate holding pattern to be in.
yeah,
And obviously this overarching concern that the players are going to start to leave, whether it's because we can't afford to keep them because we don't make the Champions League, or it's because they want to play in the Champions League, we don't make it, and they leave for that reason, or just simply because they don't like being here. Vlahovic seems very frustrated. Kulusevski, Zakaria, these players have been talking about how they didn't enjoy playing with us. I'm worried about what's going to happen in that sort of slippery snowball slope, where if these results keep getting worse, it's going to get harder and harder to drag ourselves out of it, and the consequences are going to get worse and worse. So again, in a normal pragmatic sense, it doesn't really help to get apoplectic about losing 2-0 away from home against the defending champions. In isolation, at the end of the day, we probably deserve to lose. They're a better team than we are right now, and it is what it is. But I just think what's frustrating is that there's so much more we could be doing, and we're not doing it.
yeah, and I totally agree with you there. So going on to some of the comments. I'm sorry, everyone. I did not mean to neglect y'all. But so Sharif says, if Milan played with this tactic against a real manager, they'd be eaten alive. Chelsea game has proved it anyways. Same thing with the Napoli game as well. Chelsea-Napoli, those were the two recent high-profile matches that Milan played. I didn't really bring up any of the the Sampdorias or the Empolis per se, but I wanted to look at, a team that could go, pound per pound with Milan. Chelsea ate them up alive. I also think Napoli ate them out alive too, because Milan has a glaring weakness in the air. If you have tall players and you have players that can cross, harass the hell out of them. That's what Napoli did, and that's what Chelsea did. I think Chelsea really exposed Milan defensively, even though Milan was missing players. Chelsea's with a new manager with Graham Potter, and they haven't found their stride, but they absolutely ran rampant on them in Stamford Bridge, and it made they made Tamori look like a guy that's never played a professional game in his life. How bad they harassed him, and unfortunately, I don't know if Allegri didn't watch the tape or his tactical staff didn't watch the tape because they did not do anything that Chelsea did or even make an attempt to. And then Sharif also follows up with Quadrado, 8 minutes, minute eight. So he's talking about that action that we covered. 4 players in the area, 3 totally unmarked when he shoots. How many times does he do that? Yeah, he does that a lot. I mean, Quadrado's known for doing that. And then he follows up with another comment saying that Danilo is not a man-to-man player when attacking, when people are attacking, but Cuadrado always places him in an isolated position. And then the other thing, too, that I saw was mentioned that Rabiot and Sandro play very close to each other. So that also follows in with this comment here. So you kind of lose the fullback effect, which is true because then you have 2 defenders isolating that small area. And then got some more comments on here as well. Whew, I did not realize how engaging you guys are right now. So, and then played Milan as he wished with many starters missing. So, yeah, kind of what we touched on there. Also placing Paredes to build when Milan wasn't even pressing high anymore. Keeps a full 4-4-2 defensive despite losing 2-0. And then Bim says, the only way that we can be competitive with Allegri is to have 4 Di Marias and 4 Pogbas.
Well, I think he means we need 4 Di Maria and 4 Pogba to come back.
Oh, okay. I thought he said we need 4 of
No,
them.
we could do with 4 of each of them. I don't think they'd all tactically gel at the same time, but, but yeah, no, we couldn't hurt.
Say, does he know a genetic splicer or engineer anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, if we had 4 of each, maybe one of them would be fit at a time. So
I know. Hey, man, we lost one over Di Maria's. Sorry, we got a spare.
It's too bad Pogba's brothers aren't better. Instead, they're just in jail for extorting him.
I know, right? Well, even then, like I remember watching them play. They're just poor, like really bad. Like it's just.
He got all the good genes.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess Pogba went to the right witch doctor, and the other 2 didn't.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, his witch doctor's not helping us out of it.
I know, for real. It might have been his brother that did something. Bones comes in saying, I also feel Allegri does not use the strengths of the players and just throws them out randomly. That's how I feel about his substitutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he doesn't substitute with intent. Like, it makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, no, I mean, so to pull it up, you look at the example of today. He brought on Keane for Vlahovic. And then 2 minutes later, brings on Sule for Rabiot. So why are you giving them instructions and having them adjust to a certain shape and then changing it 2 minutes later? You're wasting a sub spot. And why not just put them on at the same time and give them one set of instructions? That I never really understood in general. And a lot of managers do this. I don't know why a lot of times they're scared of making multiple subs at the same time. But in any case, it's like we're shifting from a 4-4-2 to a 4-4-3 and then back again. We should have been attacking and kept attacking players on the field, added more attacking players to it as opposed to simply swapping them out. And B, it didn't even look like we were in any semblance of shape that fit the players. Like you said, I mean, at one point we had McKinney on right wing and Rabiot on left wing. They're both not wingers, right? So how are we supposed to get crosses in to whoever the hell is playing striker at that particular minute in time when there's no structure at all? It's baffling. And again, like we've talked about this before, we're missing Chiesa, we're missing Di Maria. Fine. I don't know why you took Kostic off, but if we're not playing a wide formation with wingers, move to a narrow midfield diamond, right? Overload the center and try something different. At one point it looked like we had 3 at the back again, with Danilo tucking in and Sandro pushing up. Someone else mentioned how Sandro and Rabiot are very close together. But I just remember looking at that and thinking, like, why? Like, what are we doing? What is that bringing to the table? And then it seemed to go away just as quickly as it appeared. And so it really just seems like everyone's very confused.
Yeah. I don't know if it's the 5 substitutes that have completely, like, melted Allegri's mind or something like that. Like, I just wish, like, I wish this season All or Nothing was at Juventus instead of the Pirlo season, just because I wanna see Allegri behind the scenes. Like, I really wanna see how he sits and talks with his tactical staff and how they get, because there's gotta be something here. Like, because Allegri, we gotta call a spade a spade. Allegri's first stint, Allegri was elite with
Yeah,
substitutions and game plans.
he was
Like,
fantastic.
he was like the anti, like, for example, if you're a magician, Allegri had anti-magic. Like, he just, like, was the anti of every manager he played against. Like, he bottled the one thing that I will give him credit for was that even though he had Chiellini, Bonucci, Barzagli, and Buffon, but, like, he went to the new camp and shut out Neymar, Messi, and Suarez.
Hmm.
Like, a team in their prime was completely shut out. Even like coming, and the thing is the first season with Ronaldo, Atletico Madrid never lost a second leg that they won. Came in there, went into Turin, won 3-2 with a Ronaldo hat trick against that Atletico Madrid team. Even against current holders at the time, Real Madrid, they lost the first leg 3-0, won it 3-1. Arguably could have gone into extra time for that penalty call. Even like Pep Guardiola's Bayern Munich, like, we were a weakened squad the 15-16 season, where it was Dybala's first season, Mandzukic's first season. It was really mostly Pogba that was like the only notable in the midfield at the time, because it was Khedira's first year. We didn't even have Pjanic at the time. We went toe to toe with Bayern Munich. We went down 2-0 at home, came back, tied that game 2-2, and we balled out in Munich. We lost, but we still came in. We still threw blow for blow for them. Allegri was great. I don't know what happened during his sabbatical. I don't know. Maybe he did too much Dancing with the Stars in Italy or something like that. There are images, folks. He did do that, but
As the
I,
magic was in the hair. I mean, but no, you're right.
I guess
There's
so.
a reason why Pioli hadn't won, and at the time, I suppose, would have been 17 attempts. I don't think any of those clubs that he managed, Juventus went 17 games against without losing. I don't think. I could be wrong. So when you have that high statistical record against a particular manager, it's because Allegri had him figured out and out tactically classed him. He beat him at the chess
Yeah,
game. And today you saw the exact opposite happen. And again, Pioli had less to work with, but he seemed to adapt better. And after those first 15, 20 minutes that we had some strong pressure, it was over. And I don't consider myself a tactical genius by any stretch of the imagination. But if I was able to identify what was happening, it really makes me wonder why he's not doing anything about it, because I don't think that he's too stupid to see what's happening. It just feels like he's stubborn to no real end at this point.
yeah. Because, like, the thing is like, Pioli's not an up and comer. Pioli's been in the managing business forever. Wasn't touted again, was a mid-table manager at best for the most part. Bouncing between Fiorentina and some other lower quality squads. I think he had his one big break with Inter, but they fired him in less than half a season. Uh, Again, like, the fact that he outsmarted Allegri. I mean, game plan wise, he did, and he did last season, did this season, despite the results. It just kind of baffles to me where Allegri's head is, because the thing is like, Allegri used to, he used to own real estate in Gasparini's head, in Sarri's head, in Pioli's head, whoever was Inter's coach, because they changed coaches like people change sweaters every week. Every coach at the time, even Gattuso, even, like, again, Milan's like a bunch of managers, like, Allegri went in and outsmarted them all tactically, like, mentally. The guy was as smart as anyone else. The thing is like, I've heard the argument that people say that the game left Allegri, but is it the game left Allegri, or is it more so Allegri just kind of doesn't care anymore?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that that's a valid question. I mean, because you look at some of the like the peak Allegri days, we'd start the game with a back four, dominate the game, score a few goals, and then he'd bring on Barzagli and switch to a back three and lock it down. And it was so unbeatable that even if it became completely predictable, no one could do anything about it. But people knew what was happening, and that the people included us, and the players. Like there was a system. We look at Vlahovic's bad back pass. Obviously, there is some individual responsibility there, but the fact that that back pass was picked off so easily, I think, is partially because Vlahovic didn't know who was going to be there. If we had a structure, or system, they would have that familiarity and the chemistry on the pitch, and they'd know, okay, X player in X position is going to be in this spot at this time, and we'll be able to recycle in this way. But when he turns around and he pops the ball back there and there's no one there, um, like I said, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's certainly partially on him, and it's partially on us not having a coherent shape. That I think creates a higher percentage opportunity for these players to make errors like that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Definitely agree with you there. All right. We'll just say hi to some of our folks here. So, KB, how are you? About time you actually catch a live, because he always comments saying, like, damn, I missed these. And then he wants to say, Osato out. You want to talk about Osato for a little bit?
There was a handball too. I want to say it was Liao, but there was a pretty blatant handball by him that we didn't get a free kick for, in addition to Quadrado getting run over. The big controversy besides that was Vlahovic, the ball coming off of his arm, but his arm was pinned to his back, right, and wasn't really expanding his silhouette, and he kind of moved his whole body over the side. So some of the non-Juventini I know are saying that that was a handball. From my understanding, the rules say the ball was tight to his body. I'm sorry, the arm was tight to his body, behind his body, wasn't making his silhouette bigger. So I don't think that should have been a penalty. But if anyone has any quote from the rule book that says otherwise, I'd be happy to see it.
No,
Again, a worst case scenario, right? It cancels out what happened to Quadrado.
No, of course. So I think, so going off of what I remember, what I recall from the rules. So again, theoretically, his arms are literally tight to his body and laying down. So in theory, it's a natural position when you're in the defensive phase of the game. Because, like, for example, if you've ever seen Chiellini defend, he always defends with his arms straight down, with his arms crossed behind him. So that's kind of the position that Vlahovic was in. Again, Vlahovic curls and bench presses a lot, so he's got big tree trunk arms. There's nothing you can do, nothing you can do about that. So the thing is I did not find that as a handball. If anybody thinks that's a handball, I urge you guys to look at the rule book, the Serie A handball rule book, because the thing is, again, height. The only way that, like, he couldn't use his hands there is if he literally chopped his arm off. It's in a natural position. You can argue that he might have moved his arm a little bit or whatever, but again, that's tight. Like, so, like, for example, I'm going to do this on camera, but like, if I were in this position, if my arm was like this, where you see how I have a gap here, that's a penalty. That's an unnatural position, because I'm not defending someone like this. This I'm legitimately trying to obstruct. If I'm like this, so this is how Vlahovic is, or let me take this off so my sleeve doesn't obstruct it. But so, like, for example, if I'm defending somebody and I go like this, and because I do this all the time. So you guys see how I don't have that much of a gap in between my torso? So Vlahovic did this and then leaned into it, and the ball goes off his arm. That's 100% clean in the Serie A rule book. So that technically it shouldn't be a pen, and it's not a pen. VAR even reviewed it. VAR gave an instant response saying, no, that's not a penalty. Again, so if he goes like this, or if you guys see the gap, then it becomes a different story. It's, again, how they write the rules. It's weird, but, like, for example, with this gap versus me going straight down, this is where it gets a little bit funky, is if it catches. So, like, for example, if the replay catches me go from this position to going like this, then it's a penalty. But Vlahovic kept his arm straight like this throughout the entire action. Again, the impact of the ball might have moved his arm, because I don't care how strong you are. You get hit with a laced shot like that from, especially Leao of all people, you're moving. He probably has marks from it. But the thing is,
compared to Inter having their hand out like this and touching the ball,
yeah,
in the Champions League a couple days ago, and somehow they reviewed it and still didn't call it. It just blows your mind.
yeah, it's kind of ironic when Barcelona doesn't get a penalty called for them. which
I
is
was
weird.
I was talking in some of my group chats about how like Inter always seems to get away with the most absurdly obvious calls, and they're like, "What are you talking about? It's Barcelona that does." And I'm like, "Yes, two things can be true at the same
I
time."
know.
It's just as surprising that Barcelona didn't get a call as it is unsurprising that Inter got away with it. It's like the unmovable object and the unstoppable force. I guess someone had to flip a
You
coin
know,
backstage.
I chuckled when I saw that on Twitter when I saw the images of like Barca fans saying, "Oh, we didn't get called for this and that," and I kind of looked at them and said, huh, "First time." But
Hmm.
yeah, because guys, I mean, hey, Barca fans, we deal with that every time we play those guys. But
But I was shocked that they didn't still get the penalty. I mean, Milan statistically, by far and away, have a like impossibly high rate of penalties compared to the rest of the league. If you look at the last decade or two, I mean that it's like a statistic anomaly. If you look at the penalties they've had per games that they've had
yeah,
in the league, it's way higher than any average. If you map it, it's a clear outlier. So again, you can argue how much of that is random somehow, even though it doesn't seem statistically possible for it to be random, and how much of it's Berlusconi on in the media and referees favoring them or whatever you want to say. But yeah, I remember in that moment, as soon as I saw a review, I'm like, oh, they're giving it, and I was pretty shocked that they didn't.
yeah, I would have lost my mind if they gave it because I would have looked at them like, how? I mean, like I remember the one season where I think it was 3 or 4 years ago where Lazio was just getting penalty after penalty almost every game. Like I think the only two teams right now that get the most calls for him is Lazio and Milan. It is insane. Some of the calls too, like last season with Milan, where I'm like, it was like out of the entire first half of the season, the first 18 matches, Milan had 16 penalties. It was one of those seasons where I was just like,
Hmm.
unless these guys are just spamming shots into the box and hoping someone slaps it with their hand or something's like seriously weird here. But
Yeah.
yeah, I totally
I
get it
think
there.
I'm just guessing off the top. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but like I crunched the numbers once, and it was something like Milan got a penalty on average. It took them four fewer games per penalty than like any other top six or seven club. And you think in that time, they were finishing like sixth and seventh compared to Juve in number one. So the amount of time that they were spending in the opposition box and actually attacking was much smaller. So statistically, you would expect them to get fewer. But everyone else was like pretty much in the same range. Juve was at the bottom for fewest penalties awarded, but everyone was pretty much in the same range, except for
Yeah.
Milan was somehow just like
But
hugely inconsistent.
Rocco Comiso will always say that the league favors us more than everybody else.
Yep, yep. That's. I mean, we were joking today. We're like, yeah, we're paying the refs to go harder on us because we just want to grind even harder than everyone else. So the grind never stops. We're like, please, please, we're masochists. We want you to, or sadists, whichever, I forget which it
it's
is.
like,
We're like
Daddy,
having them.
please.
Yeah, we'll pay you to just go really, really hard on us.
Yeah, just slap me in the. I bet you Allegri's looking at POA at pregame. He's like, slap me in the face. Just hit me. Alrighty. So KB says, I can safely say that Milan were not better than Juve. All the goals came from our players collapsing on themselves. Yeah, I'll show you some really cool pictures in a couple minutes. So you'll get a kick out of
Well,
that.
let's be fair. I mean, Leao is fantastic. Um,
Superstar.
the Brahim run was pretty strong. I don't want to say that man for man we were better than them, but at the same time we certainly made them look a lot better than they are,
Yeah.
for sure.
And I think his comment is more so catering towards saying that like it wasn't in theory it wasn't like supposed to be like this huge sizable gap. Like it was there. I think maybe 45, 55, maybe at most 40, 60% as far as like, strength versus each other, which I don't disagree with. Again, they have God, and I said this in the pregame, dude. Leao and Teo Hernandez on the same side is just absolutely deadly. I mean, because the thing is Teo Hernandez runs everywhere. He's not contained to just the left side of the field. He will go straight through the middle, shift over on the right. Like, how is he considered a left back? He's like a box to box midfielder.
Yeah, yeah, kind of like a Metzola, right? I guess is that sort of wider box to box player.
Yeah.
But I think one of the most humiliating things about this defeat is between Teo and Giroud, losing to two French guys with frosted tips. It's like, oh God, come on. What are we doing?
I know.
That's a new
Have
low.
anyone that. Ugh. I know, and now everybody in Milan is doing frosted tips because of him. Because look at Giroud.
Yeah, we basically got beat by NSYNC.
Yeah, I wonder how many people in the comments actually know what NSYNC is. That just shows our age right there. DV, I think he's assuming Dusan. The kid used as a bait and pull defenders away, back to goal, 30 meters away from goal. I see it. He kind of strikes me as a Lukaku almost, if you think about it. Like it's almost like a younger Lukaku, like prior to Everton, the way that he plays. It's interesting. And then going on to Marion. So I feel Juve is a mentally weak team. The first goal killed us. Absolutely. Bones says something the people at Paramount were saying that we have no kind of pace that even when we're through, the defense is not to worry because they can easily catch us. Yeah, he's saying even if we're on a breakaway, they could catch us. Another thing that Paramount didn't say, and I said this in our Turin Giants group chat, I was like, Paramount Plus didn't cover any of the footage from Chelsea or Napoli explaining that Milan is weak in the air. They were like making him out to be like this amazing team. I was just like, ugh, do better, Paramount Plus.
Yeah, and they've got the rights to the Champions League too, don't they? So they have no
Yeah,
excuse in that regard.
I
But
think,
no, I do think pace has been an issue. I mean, McKinney seems a lot slower after his injury. We're missing Chiesa and his explosive pace, and he probably won't have as much of it as he did prior to the injury. Even Di Maria at his age is above average pace. So we're missing a lot of our faster players for sure. And I think that certainly didn't help. But again, if we have 60% of possession, in theory, we're not relying on pace and counterattacks. We're relying on actually doing literally anything with the ball.
yeah,
You look at Bologna, we had good counterattacks. But if I recall, I mean, the counterattacks against Bologna, they weren't even really pacey counterattacks. It was more
no,
just like out angling
yep.
the defenders. But I don't know. Yeah, I mean, we really could use Chiesa's speed. Hopefully, he still has some.
Yeah, right. Now, I don't know about this fitness staff though. All right. So KB says Quadrado's foul. That challenge was terrible from Teo because he took the player out. Yeah, Teo came at him like a freight train. Like he smoked him. I still don't understand how that wasn't called at all.
It
I mean,
seemed
how do
pretty
you miss
obvious.
that? Yeah.
And you look at how Quadrado, we took him off because he was on a yellow. I think was a huge part of why he was taken off. Bless you. I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I was holding it. I was like, no.
But you look at Teo is like, okay, well, he would have been a lot less effective the rest of the game had he been carrying a yellow while he was doing that. I can't remember who it was who jumped in front of the free kick we had just to start a scrum for no reason. But even those are the sorts of things that they can't get away with, right? If they're on a card,
Yeah.
and so the fact that Teo got away with that, I think, was rough for multiple reasons.
The crazy thing though, I don't even think that would have stopped Teo because Teo probably is one of the most red carded players in Serie A. Like that dude just does
Yeah.
not care.
But I mean,
Like
maybe that's the only way we could have won is if they went a man down. Look at
that's
Sergio Ramos
true.
got sent off today. If only he was playing in
I
Serie
know.
A. Could
That's
you imagine?
true. I'd love to see him. I would love to see him play in the '90s, like '90s Serie A with like Maldini, Nesta, and all those guys. Like they
He
would
got
make.
sent off today because he said something to the ref actually.
Yeah,
But
so like this was back in like 2012 on Facebook when Ramos had like the long hair and no tattoos, and then like after he had like that full like complete evolution as a person, everyone used to like joke around with him and be like, Ramos used to be the guy that would pose in baby oil, and now he's the guy like the old Joker. He would tell you that he has his daughter home by 9, but instead you call him daddy now. Like, oh my god, those memes are hilarious.
I
Ramos
always
had. Go ahead.
Huh? I always hated Ramos. I always think of that the video of like it was like a Castilla youth product kind of bumped into him in training, and Ramos like lashed out and tried to like beat him up, and it's like, how is your captain physically assaulting a teenager in training? Like that just is ridiculous to me, So that's when I realized like I don't like Real Madrid. I don't like Ramos. But when Ramos got sent off on purpose in the Champions League to reset the yellow card accumulation,
Yeah.
I was like, that's brilliant. Like, I
Yeah.
don't like you, I don't like your team, but you are operating legally within the rules to do something that has a strategic benefit. And I typically dislike players being punished for being clever within the rules, right? So that was a situation where I was like, okay, good job, right? But then you look at all of these things that he does, and you're like, no, but you're also not a nice person who's like always trying to injure people. And I was like, okay, that I'm not gonna like. But so you think, with Juve, like, when do we have players stand up and get the boot in? Bonucci was blazed straight past. Bremer, I
He
mean,
got
he
nutmegged.
did okay. But that's the thing is, we don't have a Chiellini now to step up and lead the team and get the boot in and get the yellow for a professional foul or whatever it is. Who, I mean, of course we have players getting professional fouls still, but it's like that extra level of cleverness and of guile and of motivation that, as much as I dislike Ramos, he clearly has brought some of that to his sides. And Chiellini, I think Chiellini is maybe the good version of Ramos. Ramos is the evil version of Chiellini, because you
Yeah,
look
I was gonna
like,
say that.
yeah,
Yeah,
like Chiellini, he's a nice guy who's going to joke with you. It doesn't matter if you're on a rival team. He's going to smile and help you up. He's never, trying to hurt you or be dirty and deceptive. I miss having that a lot. And I think the team clearly, we can't. This is one of the reasons why I didn't think Napoli was going to do well this year, right? Because they lost Insigne, they
Koulibaly.
lost
Yeah.
Koulibaly, they lost Mertens. I think a lot of our problems ultimately come down to missing that leadership and that steel. And it's very impressive and unfortunate to see that the one team that was able to recover from that was them and not us.
Yeah, and gosh, that just kind of shows Bonucci as a leader versus Chiellini and Buffon. Because, like, I remember the one thing that I liked about the pandemic seasons was that you could hear everyone talking. And when Buffon was on the squad, when he'd play, it was during the Sarri seasons and the Pirlo seasons. You could hear Buffon, even like if Ronaldo had the ball up top, you would hear Buffon yelling, "Ragazzi, ragazzi, calma," like just organizing his team from the back.
Mm-hmm.
We need something like that, man. There's too many passive players on the team. And Bones, it's funny because he's saying, "Are you saying we should get Ramos?" Ramos would kick our other center backs in the head for some of the stuff that he would probably snap Quadrado's legs for some of the stuff that Quadrado does. And the thing is like here in American sports, a lot of times we get like players on contracts that are on veteran deals or like locker room players. I wonder if Juve should start looking and doing that concept, man. Because like, even though,
Pinsolia.
yeah, I guess Pincelio's only there for the TikToks with Cabby, but because like the thing is like, and I love Pincelio, but Pincelio's never accomplished anything. Like, no one takes him seriously. I think everyone's just there to like give him high fives and hugs and pose on Instagram with him.
But that's a positive too. I don't think he has to. You don't have to be intimidating to bring an intangible positivity to the locker room. I think I don't want to say good cop, bad cop, but you need a motivator. You need someone who brings those good vibes, and you need someone who's gonna, you know, make people work hard and feel that sense of dedication as well. I think they both have their place.
I get you.
But also, I mean, Pinsolio fulfills the club trains squad spot too, which people always forget people
Yeah,
always forget that that's a huge uh, part of the plan. Um, and I think that people don't necessarily realize just how special it is that we're able to have a third choice goalkeeper who, fulfills that, right? Because so many other clubs, they just don't have anyone who they've ever trained who's good enough in Serie A. And I think it hinders their strategy a lot more than people realize.
no, I totally get it. I think the one thing though, kind of to add on to the good cop, bad cop, is I think Bonucci was always the bad cop with him and Chiellini as far as like the pairing, because some of the stuff he would say in interviews. And I think we're really missing that good cop, like that leader, or like that really good cop. And I think, and I don't want to say Bonucci's like a Walmart version of Ramos, but like it's just like Bonucci, I don't understand some of the stuff that he does or says. Like he tries to be like this bad cop, but at the same time, he's also trying to be a good cop per se. So it's like that weird hybrid. But I think as far as like getting a locker room guy like another Chiellini, not like again the same exact player, but that was the guy that Delict was supposed to be, but Delict kind of just bounced and dipped. it's tough, man. Because you look at football now as a sport in general. There's not really like players out there that you're just like, oh, this guy's a definite leader. This guy's like a captain. And I'm not saying like Ronaldo and Messi esque leadership, but like where you have a reliable guy that's your guy, that's your captain that your team goes around. You see that more so in the lower club, even the mid to lower table teams. But like as far as like your top elite clubs, you don't really see that as often as you'd used to back in the day. Because like back then, you knew whenever you were playing Milan, Maldini was their guy. Back then with Barcelona, Puyol was their guy. Um, with Real Madrid, it was Zidane or Figo, or before Ramos, it was Casillas as their captain. Manchester United, Paul Scholes or Wayne Rooney or Van de Sar. I don't think Van de Sar was ever their captain, but I think it was mostly Paul Scholes. Chelsea had Frank Lampard. Like all those clubs had those like definite leaders. And I think we're just going into the modern game where there isn't really much of a leader, and the captain's armband is kind of just for show more so. But I think we're noticing. I think we're noticing with Juve that, because I think Juve is a club based off of tradition and the old school leaderships and things like that. Where this is kind of like the first time we don't really have that leader that can rally everyone. Because like Buffon and Chiellini did a hell of a job of getting everybody together when they needed to.
Yeah, I definitely think we're at the end of an era in terms of Del Piero, Buffon, Marchisio, Chiellini, and then also, the rest of the peninsula, Zanetti, Totti, Maldini, like you said. I think there's certainly a big hole where those folks used to be. I wonder how much of it is the game changing and how much of it is simply just the end of a cycle that had coincided. I definitely think it's probably a bit of both. But I mean, who knows? Like someone like Moretti could grow up to become another Marquisio. I don't know. I mean, I think that's been said a lot of times before, and it never really panned out. Um, but it's possible. But I think a lot of these other clubs they've got younger captains. But even Di Natale, I mean, Di Natale, you think he was Mr. Udinese. He
Yeah.
didn't. He probably didn't even become their captain until he was like, I don't know, 30 or something, right? I mean, he was captain from
Mhm.
like, I'm just guessing, ages 30 to 38 or so. You know what I mean? Like he felt like he was there forever, but he didn't show up until later. So, with Juve, you would normally hope that these things would be spread out a little bit better. And Bonucci, I think, doesn't feel like the leader that he should, simply because he went to Milan. And like you said, a lot of the things he said about Ken when he was being racially abused at Cagliari, which I didn't really agree with or like,
Yeah.
it seems like he's lacking a lot of what someone of his stature should be providing. And it is kind of frustrating that now we're just stuck with that.
I know. It sucks. Ugh. All right. So KB follows up and says, can we mention how DV9 has been or is? Personally, I would bench him, elephant's first touch. So I kind of made this comparison to Lukaku. Kind of strikes me as a Lukaku, but like not the full prime version of Lukaku. Because a couple of things that I've noticed is he has not been having the greatest first touch, as well as kind of like, I saw someone on Juve Twitter posting, well, you shouldn't be paying 70 million for a striker to drop down and do build up play. I'm like, do you not realize how much that opens up your offense if your striker can drop down and build play up or make a through ball or make a pass out to the wings? I was like, that's probably one of the most underrated things I've ever seen. But going back on to Vlahovic, I don't know, man. My dad was telling me at the beginning of the season that he's concerned about him. He was saying that, I don't know, man. I think we paid too much money for this guy. If he flops, it's going to set us back pretty badly, just because of the money that's involved with it. I'm not saying that he's a flop or going to flop, but I think his one-dimensional esque game is really kind of being shown per se now versus in Fiorentina. Because the thing is a couple of things is it's easier to hide things when you're at Fiorentina or Bologna, just because one, you don't really have that much of a spotlight on you, versus when you're at a Juve, a Milan, or an Inter, because everyone's watching you, everyone's studying your game, everyone's figuring out how to beat you per se. Versus like, for example, if you're at Fiorentina, where everyone's like, we'll study the film, or your scouts will look at it per se, but like as far as game preparation, I think now so that again, Vlahovic is going up against bigger teams, more spotlight, a lot of tacticians are looking at how he plays and figuring out how to play him out of position or play him uncomfortably. And I think that's what's happening with Dusan is that let it be Pioli or anyone else. There's so much reference material now with his time at Juve, where a lot of these people, when playing against us, they try to put Dusan in an uncomfortable position. They'll put him in an uncomfortable position. And I think Dusan, because guys, he's only 22 years old. Like he's not 26, 27, 28 years old. So he's got one style that made him at the echelon that he is, and I think again it's growing up for Dusan. I think it's just a part of growing up for him as well because Moretti is only 3 years younger than Dusan. Like I think a lot of people forget how young he is. I mean, you can get frustrated at him as well, but at the end of the day, dude's 22 years old. Because the thing is like you'll see Mbappe and Holland make some of the same mistakes that Dusan does. And again, I'm not trying to cover him for the mistake he made this game, but I think it's just a matter of growing up. I think Dusan needs to kind of incorporate more into his style because the thing about Lukaku is like Lukaku has a donkey first touch, as Ibra used to call it. But Lukaku again was strong, powerful, could finish, and can drive upfield. Where I think Vlahovic, most of his heyday at Fiorentina was his ability to do kind of like a Holland-esque tap in per se. Just because again, Fiorentina, you have 10 to 11 balls being thrown at you versus at Juve, you might get 4 or 5. And I think that's the difference. And one of the reasons why Lukaku succeeded at Inter Milan too is even though, like, for example, Conte didn't really create that many chances, Conte created the chances and Lukaku was able to finish. That I think that's the thing that's separating Vlahovic from that top echelon because even with Holland, a lot of the passes that Man City do, they're just throwing it into the box and seeing if he sticks on any of them. It's not per se that like, oh, hey, it's Holland-esque tactics or this because you guys got to remember the film on Holland at Borussia Dortmund. He could take the ball and drive forward. There was a couple of times where I think he almost snapped Kimmich's leg because Kimmich tried to slide tackle him when he was driving forward. But I do think, and before I keep rambling here, but I do think that Vlahovic is kind of hitting his current ceiling of what he can do. I think Dusan has to break that ceiling to unlock the deeper potential within him. I don't think he's bad. I just think he's kind of hit his limit that he needs to pull the old Goku and go Super Saiyan and go beyond it. Any thoughts on your end, Weston?
Yeah, I mean some of the New York folks were saying as well that his finishing's been disappointing. I personally think that all the criticism of him is kind of lazy because I mean you think about it, he's scored from his feet in open play, his head in open play, he's scored free kicks, he's scored penalties, he's assisted. Remember we were up until a week or two ago when I last checked the stat, dead last in all of Europe's top 5 leagues of every club. So that's I don't know, 100 clubs for the amount of passes that we had completed in the opposition third. He's not getting fed good passes. And also you think about I think 1 or 2, maybe even 3 goals he scored this season that were called off that were pretty good finishes that didn't count towards his tally. So again, they're not goals, but we've seen what he can do physically putting the ball in the net in that scenario, even if the point doesn't stand on the board. I think he's frustrated because there's all this pressure on him as the end product, as the goal scorer, to drag us out of this. But he's part of the worst Juventus since the war, right? Statistically speaking. So I think he's doing pretty good for what he's been given. I know that if I'm playing in my team and I'm not getting the ball all game, I'm frustrated. When I play striker, and obviously I'm not as good as Vlahovic. So yeah, I don't understand the criticism of him. I think it's normal for him to not do what he did at Fiorentina when he was the end all be all, showstopper focus of that squad. And now he's not a squad player because he's a starter, but he is now one face in a deeper team. But yeah, I don't get the criticism. I think he's doing great. I think he's a young player who's only going to get better. And I think just because he has things he can improve on doesn't mean that most of the fault doesn't lie around him. It's not like he's constantly skying easy shots. If anything, he's been creating stuff out of nothing. And I think he deserves credit for that.
Yeah, I get you there. And I think also the criticism comes with the price tag too. I think that's one of the things as well. Because again, if you're an 80 million, $90 million player, I mean, it's like, what was it? Gareth Bale was absolutely getting reamed until he did that ridiculous run against Barcelona in the Copa del Rey. So, and that's one of the things too that I mentioned is, guys, remember he's 22 years old. Like, I think
Hmm.
everyone forgets that. Like, everybody thinks he's like 29 years old and like level of Lewandowski at Bayern Munich. And it's like, it's not. He's not. Again, youngsters, especially his age, they have a style that helps them break through or get their big break. And I think right now, again, also with the club being terrible, but I also think again, more limelight, coaches are actively playing against him essentially, like opposition teams where they're like, hey, if we cut off Vlahovic or do anything that we can do to cut off Dusan, then Juve's dead in the water, which in theory we are. And that's one of those things where I just think that again, he's 22 years old. There's a style that he plays, and it's just right now. I think everyone kind of has their number. I think whether it be a new coach, a new tactic, or anything like that, once there's a little bit more progression, or like even like we saw the sign against Maccabi, where we're able to get some movement, get some open space, he's able to cook. So it's just there's a bunch of numerating factors that are in there. For me, I just hope he doesn't, lose his head or get frustrated or go through just a dry patch where he just doesn't have confidence. I think that's the only thing that I'm more so concerned with. But again, criticism and things come with the price tag. It is what it is at that point.
Yeah, and again, I mean, the price tag is an important part of the context, but it's like he didn't set that fee. I mean, that's a fee that was inflated because we were buying from a rival who hates selling to us. You know what I mean? Like, you can argue if the money is too high, then that's on management. But I just pulled up his stats on FB Ref. If you're familiar with the site, he's 95th percentile in Europe's top five leagues over the last year for non-penalty goals. Right. So out of all the strikers in the top five leagues in the last 365 days, he is one of the best that there is. Right. I think that that's a huge stat that really proves his ability. And I just don't really understand kind of scapegoating him.
Yeah, having him be like the responsible actor, the responsible protagonist for the form or anything that the club is going through right now is ridiculous. I think that's a huge overstep that people need to stop being on Twitter and like take a minute and go for a walk before they do something like that.
He's also not even been with us for a year yet. That's
Yeah,
another thing to keep in mind too. So again, obviously, some of the stat that I just mentioned is pulling some from his Fiorentina days, but he was here for half a season and then the beginning of another season. And you think most players usually take. I mean, Holland obviously didn't need any time to gel, maybe one match, but he's kind of superhuman. So
yeah, that guy is just absolutely built different. Like, because like even with Robert Lewandowski with Barcelona, like a striker of his stature still took time to settle in properly. So I'm not saying that oh hey, Vlahovic needs to settle and etc. But there's a lot of factors around it too, guys. Like for example, if Cuadrado played that ball instead of Pat and shot it and it landed on Vlahovic's feet, no one would be talking about this right now. Like no one would be saying, "Oh, Vlahovic is terrible" or blah blah blah. It's the same thing with Di Maria. Dave and I talked about that. I think it was yesterday or the day before. No, we talked about that Calcio boy. We were saying it because like everyone prior to the Maccabi hat trick of assists, everyone's like, "Oh, Di Maria was only here to stay in shape for the World Cup. Didn't care about the club. Wasn't really going to produce anything. Drops a hat trick and assists. Could have had four." There's just a bunch of numerating factors with a lot of the things that are going on, and I don't like saying like for example today I would say that it was more so the team making multiple errors as a unit versus Vlahovic gave a perfect assist to Brahim Diaz, and that's why we lost. Like I don't like singling it out.
well, and again, why was he in that position? We already
Exactly.
talked about how the pass was bad, likely partially because of the team structure. But why was our center forward, while we're down 2-0, coming that deep to have to recycle the ball anyway? Right? It's because he was getting frustrated that we weren't getting the ball to him and he was coming deeper and deeper into the field. And then no one opened up to give him any real option. So again, I'm not trying to say that there's zero fault with him for a bad pass, But when your striker is giving up a back pass for a goal, there's clearly a larger problem there. He should be standing in the box, getting balls passed to him. And so it's not as black and white as I think a lot of people want to make things
Yeah,
seem.
no, for sure. And Dave says hi. So, hey, Dave, how are you, buddy? I wish you could have joined us like an hour ago in the chat, but whatever. Still miss you though.
Should we tell folks why he's not here?
We should. Dave is currently celebrating Canadian Thanksgiving, and he is on a trip with some family. So Dave will be back next week. Actually, tomorrow morning, I believe. I don't know if Dave wanted to announce it himself or not, but I'll do it for him. So Dave and our other correspondent, Kevin McIntyre, will be doing a episode of Career Mode for FIFA 23 tomorrow morning. So you'll be able to hear Dave talk about his thoughts on the match and more FIFA stuff. So again, that is the crew, the peeps. You guys dictate the transfers, dictate the tactics. Dave is just the guy on the controls. So feel free to check in. Shameless plug, but feel free to check in our FIFA Career Mode series because that is for the fans by the fans. So you guys essentially dictate everything besides Dave's FIFA skill. Dave says 10 a.m. Eastern time for us. So that's like 6 hours. It's like afternoon, like early afternoon in Italy, if there's any of you guys overseas. But super cool. I believe Dave is going to open up the Discord chat too, so like you guys can actually like stop by and say hello too, also on the comments. So going on from there. So I'm going to pull up the because I'm going to wrap this up shortly because we've gone well past over the hour mark, but I'll pull up the player ratings and then I'll go into the images. So some of the ratings here. So again, this is FOTMob, guys. So everyone has a different kind of rating perspective, but I've used FOTMob for years, so these are my bread and butter. So again, Chesney was given a 5.9, not really much. Sandro surprisingly was rated highly. Danilo with a 6.1, Bremer and Bonucci about 6, average. Mr. Rabbit over here is continuing his decent form with a 7.3. I'm kind of surprised that they gave, maybe it's more so for the bad pass, that they gave Dusan a 5 versus Locatelli giving him a 6. But Milik again, 6.8. Quadrado was rated surprisingly high than I thought, a 6.8. So then Giroud, obviously good. I don't really care about the Milan players, so I'm not going to talk about them. Blah. But so overall, I think we're averaging about 6.5. Allegri, did Allegri even get a rating? Usually they rate the coach, but I would rate him like a 5.5. But overall, that's the rating. So I wanted to bring up some images, some interesting images that I took in the actions that led up to the goal. And this might actually clarify the bad pass for Vlahovic that a lot of people were growing him on. So this is going to be the first one here. So this is the corner kick that I talked about, Quadrado whiffing it. So if you guys can see, I'm going to try to zoom in as close as I can to Quad. So look at his right leg, and the ball is right here. So instead of him taking his left foot and getting a touch on it, he tries to cross his right foot over his body. As makes no sense. I've never seen a defender taught to defend like that. So he does this, and then the next image over is kind of a different angle. So this is what he's trying to do, and this is, I believe, the ball going right past him. So he tries to do something like this, which then in turn results in the ball literally coming over here, bouncing over, and going into Giroud. But defensively, that surprises me right there. Me as a coach, I would have lost my mind if I saw that. It's poor defending, especially on a corner kick. You should never, as a defender, never, if the body's on, or if the ball is on one side of your body, you should never cross your leg like that to try to make a play, because you will not. You'll miss it every single time. So again, looking at it from this angle here, I don't understand it, because the ball is literally, so had he moved his left leg in that position, he would have had a better range of motion, better reach, and would have been able to clear that or even move it out of the way or even bounce it back for a corner kick. Again, we can live in what ifs as much as we want. It's not going to change the fact that what happened, but right there, it's just poor decision making by Quadrado right there.
Is it not partially because he's trying to kick it to the left that he's using his right foot versus trying to do it on the outside of his foot with his left foot to the left? I mean,
So it's
how would he clear it out with his left foot from that angle?
so the thing is what my thing is with the left foot is even if he were to clear it straight out, even if it were to result for a throw in, because like for example, the idea is when you're in a position like this, you just want the ball out of the box entirely. So like the thing is like putting myself in that position, I would stick my left out to even try to make an interception with it because he has daylight in front of him. So even if he were to get a trap or even slow it down to take a touch in this space, no one's here. If he were to make any kind of contact with the ball, or even if he were to get decent contact with his left and send the ball out in this area here, it would just result in a throw in, which is better than what happened. Again, 2020 hindsight. But doing a crossover like that, the reason why it's bad to do what he did is, again, if you miss it, it catches even in general, if you miss anything when you're missing a clearance on defense, most of the time your teammates can't react because your teammates aren't going to sit there and say Quadrado is going to whiff it, so I'm going to anticipate it. And you can argue and say that's bad defending by the other players, but yeah, I've noticed it even when I've played goalkeeper where it's like I'm positioning myself to stop a shot, and then when my defender makes a poor clearance, there's kind of like, and I don't know if you noticed this, but with all the defenders in our back line at that time, they had like a gap of 4 to 5 seconds where they all froze. Like they're like, oh crap. And then Drew got the ball and shot it. So when you do something like that, that's why there's like that old term when they say no nonsense defending. It's one of those things where you don't try to do anything obnoxious because what I think Quadrado wanted to do is he switched over to his right so he could send the ball straight forward to either Vlahovic or the middle of the park. I think that's his thought process, taking it from what the range of motion was. But sometimes you just got to clear it. So this is the resulting image. I believe this is the Vlahovic. Yep. So here's something interesting. I'm going to ask you, do you know who this is right here? It's tough to see him.
Is that Paredes?
No, that is Rabiot.
Really? Oh, it looks like his head's blonde.
Yeah, it's just the image quality because I had to do it so we didn't get the copyright strikes and all that fun stuff. But that is Adrian Rabiot right there. Wow. And this is where Dusan is. So, again, that pass was led to a couple of things. Again, bad pass, player error, but also the position that he is. He's your center forward. He's looking like he's a right winger at this point. So, and then the ball's coming into him. So then he went from, again, look at the previous image. Him moving a little bit closer. So he had to drop down to receive it because, again, it was a bad touch by his end. And then some folks can argue that he could have played it to Danilo right here or tried to move the ball to Rabiot. There's, 2020, lots of things, 2020 hindsight, there's a lot of things that he could have done differently. But even the fact that Vlahovic is down in this position doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
It should be Rabiot that's here and Dusan that's up there. And then here's the crazy thing about it too. So you can't see it, but just shoot a guess who you think this is.
Is that Milik?
Yep, it's Milik.
Yeah. See, that's what I'm saying. Is again,
Yep.
like we can put fault on Vlahovic, but the fact that we have a situation where our two strikers are in the middle of the pitch having to pass backwards with Rabiot ahead. It just, I mean, I don't understand what convoluted sort of overlap this could possibly be if it were intentional.
Exactly.
Like we're not doing a false nine.
Yeah, and it's not that at all. And it's weird because it's like we're playing a 4-3-3, but instead, so that I think that's Sandro. But you have Alexandro, you have Rabiot, and you have McKennie as your front three, and then your midfield three is Milik, Danilo, and Vlahovic. Like that to me it's weird, obscenely weird. So, and then these are some of, again, this is the same image because, so the thing is Dusan proceeds after that initial touch, he takes a second touch to dribble in this direction. I'm trying to play devil's advocate here. Again, he has a couple of out options where he could play the Danilo and Danilo could drive the ball forward or whatever, or even try to force a pass to Rabiot as well. But the thing is what interests me is that Milik, I don't think Milik was expecting the pass because you could tell from his body language here because the next image is the pass itself. So Diaz was right here initially. So this is where Diaz was. And Milik's already putting his right foot down. So Milik's momentum is on that side of the body. So Milik, you can tell just because of the body language or the body positioning of Milik, he's not expecting the ball to come to him. Because if you watch the clip on the highlights, you can see that there's like a good 2-second delay from the ball being moved towards Milik to Milik saying, "Oh crap, that's towards me." So it's again tactical mistake, passing mistake, also players in weird positions. But the second the ball gets moved, Diaz pounces. Milik's trying to recover because he's like, I didn't think that was coming towards me. And then Diaz already saw it because Diaz was up there, pushes forward, and then begins to attack. The one thing that I thought was interesting was Bonucci right here. So unfortunately, again, flash freeze image, can't really do the best when it comes to quality on this. But so defensive positioning. So one thing that you're taught in defensive school or any coaches that teach defenders is never say square to an offensive player when they're coming at you. You either look at them at a right or a left 30-degree angle where you position your body so you can shuffle with them. Bonucci plants both of his feet straight up, flat-footed, and squared to him, which results in a nutmeg. And Bonucci getting nutmegged, and Bonucci's. And the thing is the one thing I don't understand is why Bonucci at that point didn't proceed to try to at least hold on to Diaz or grab him just to take the tactical foul, because you have Bremer that's right there. So I don't think that would have been red card, not even a red card offense. Just because, again, it's all the way out here. It's not even a clear and obvious goal scoring chance, because I'm sure there could have been a possibility of it. But that right there is just a couple of miscues that led to what happened per se. And again, before everyone loses their mind on Dusan, remember this. Your front three is McKennie, Rabiot, and Sandro instead of Dusan. So, like, when someone says that, Dusan's not supposed to link up play, yeah, not in this regard. But, like, for example, if he's up here and he drops down and opens up a through ball in these directions, it would make more sense. But that's just, again, it's a bad pass. We got to call it as it is. It's a bad pass. But at the same time, these guys don't even know what the hell they're doing. And we're down 1 at this point, and we're technically in the game. It's not like we're trying to make crap happen at this point. Like, Rabiot should never be your leading guy up top. How that happened, I don't know. Like, that to me is absolutely insane. If I was Allegri, I would have been yelling for them to I would have been like, Vlahovic, just kick the ball out of bounds at this point and just reshuffle the position and get everyone back in shape, because this is nuts. Like, that is absolutely nuts. So that, to me, I just found that a little bit interesting on both of the goals that we conceded. It was just more so kind of us beating us in a sense. Like, we can say that Milan forced us in those really awkward positionings as well, but it's almost like we don't know how to play. It's almost like Juve don't know how to play the game.
Yeah. I mean, we've said it before and we'll say it again. Allegri does not seem to be giving them good instructions, and that is opening them up to individual errors.
Yeah. And then Dave also says, I hope Weston didn't hold back. No, he went ham. He destroyed them. And then we're gonna answer some comments, and then I guess we'll sign off. We've been doing this for quite a while now, so we'll answer some of these last minute comments. So get in your comments and questions before we decide to sign off and call it a night, because I think we need a night and we need some beverages to sleep this one off. All right. And then Dave says, Dash, take my messages off the screen. No, I'm not going to. Bone says Bonucci got left flat-footed. Bonucci got taken to school. They took him back to defending 101 right there. All right. And then Bone says, I think they got confused and thought they were going the other way. Yeah, no, for sure. And then Dave says, I want to know how Dash has time to watch the game and then make a bunch of graphics while working at the restaurant all day. Does he bend time? Dave, come on, man. You can't be putting my stuff out there. The CIA is watching this, and it's like, oh, time bender? Boom. Let's get him. So the funny thing is, so I was working, so I actually, like, coincidentally, I watch my family's restaurant on the weekends. So I was there, and coincidentally, I decided to work on some new menu and branding stuff as the game was working. So I was like, hey, guys, I'm going to step in the back office and work on some paperwork. You guys will be fine for 90 minutes, right? So I did that. The funny thing is, I actually got home at like 4 o'clock, and then I pulled up the film, and then I was just like fast forwarding it because the thing is, guys, work smarter, not harder. So I took mental images of the minutes of when all these errors happened, so I could just rewind to it and then just take my old snipper tool and throw all that suckers on there. So I do all this because I love you guys. So I'm gonna beg for a like. So could you give me a quick like for that, please? A like in the chat. But anyways, I think that's all the comments and questions we got from you folks. Weston, do you have any final thoughts? Any social media plugs? Any articles that you're going to be dropping anytime soon where you want people to find them?
No, not at the moment. Just basically asking everyone to think really, really, really hard about us knocking 10 past Maccabi Haifa on Tuesday or Wednesday to get our goal differential up. So at least we have something to hope for. That's really all I can ask. So if vibes have any power whatsoever, now would be a cool time to find out.
So, what's your post Juve drink? Is it gin, vodka? No.
Tears at this point. Um, yeah,
Oof.
I don't know. That's a good question. We have an unopened bottle of limoncello that we haven't quite figured out what to do with yet.
It's funny. My
Uh,
neighbor's Italian, and he told me this once. This was before I even knew what limoncello was. He looks at me. He's like, "Hey, Dash, you want some lemonade? It'll put some hair on your chest." And I'm like, "Since when does lemonade do that?" And I drink it, and it just burnt through my chest. I was like, "What is this?" Because he's from he's near from Bologna, the Bologna region. So like he was born, grew up over there, and he moved over here, and he got it. I don't know how he got it through customs, but he brought an authentic bottle of limoncello from Bologna over here, and that was probably the strongest liquor I've ever had in my life.
well, I'm sure he was drinking that when we beat them 3-0.
The funny thing is he's a Lazio fan.
Oh,
I never got that. I was always asking him, like, dude, you're from Bologna, but you like Lazio, and he's like, hey, man, I was, and I think he was more of the Mihalovic and the Nedved days back when they were at Lazio. I think that's probably why. Because if there's
yeah.
one thing, that sits true is men are probably loyal to the football club that like they were first introduced as a kid. Like they will never change teams. Like I don't.
I don't
So
know.
yeah.
I became a Juventino the season we were in Serie B, and the first Champions League season, first time I ever got to watch the Champions League was when Milan went all the way and won. And I somehow picked Juve over Milan. So when one was winning Europe and one was in the second division, I made my choice as a 11-year-old or however old I was at the time. And so I
you
don't know
know,
why I did that, but I did. So
I've always wondered because, like, how like a lot of people have their kids do pictures with Charmander, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle, like choosing their starter for the first time. For it's like a Pokemon reference. I don't know if people get it entirely, but
I did Yu-Gi-Oh a bit as a kid, but I never did Pokemon.
oh, I got you. So let me do this. So Blue Eyes White Dragon, Dark Magician, and Red Eyes Black Dragon. So like those are like your three, like Yugi, Kaiba, and
Hmm.
Joey as your starter decks. So like I think for Serie A fans, I bet you they have like their kid sitting in front of like this like a Milan and Inter and a Juve jersey, and they sit there and be like, choose your fighter almost. Like I kind of want to do that. Like if I ever have kids, I'll just like literally have my son just in front of me looking at the three jerseys and see what he picks. If he picks anything other than Juve, I'm just gonna call the manufacturers and say that is there the warranty still valid on this?
Well, that's why Atalanta, I think one of the reasons why they have such fervent support up there is because they do the care packages for newborn babies in the Bergamo region, where they send them a jersey
Oh yeah,
when
yeah,
they're
yeah.
born.
No.
So even as a child, you end up getting your first kit. And I mean, it's just such a brilliant marketing
It
campaign
is.
because they don't have that many people in the region where it's an assailable expense. But I'd assume you put some good money in it, and you kind of assume that you're going to get a decent return on it. And with the big Milan sides just a bit south, it's probably smart.
No, definitely. I think those guys will. I think Atalanta in the next 10, 15 years, they're going to start moving. They're going to take some really good strides forward, and financially, and as well as a club too. Because I think right now it's only the beginning with those guys.
People thought they dropped off after after the last few years. Papa Gomez leaving, and it seemed like Gasperini had had faltered a bit, but they've been very quietly one of the top best clubs in the league right now. So, but
Dude,
yeah, I think a lot Juve is kind of hoping that they and Udinese drop off eventually, and they very well might. But even if they do, that's not necessarily enough to save us unless we start changing.
yeah, I do think though Atalanta probably has one of the best back offices in Serie A for sure. I just think the way that they're run and organized for sure.
They certainly got the better of us with Romero.
Oh, absolutely, and almost with Demirel too. Niket says, "No way, Dash. I would have handed my son a full Juve kit with socks." Well, I like drama. I like to live dangerously. Like kind of like how Benucci's kids are all Torino fans. All right, Bowen says, my nephew's dad is a Madrid fan, and my nephew refuses to be a Madrid fan. He goes for any other team. You know what's funny? He says that about Madrid. So I have a friend of mine that I play soccer with, huge Madrid fan, and he ended up he went to Spain and then he went to the new camp and posted pictures of himself at the new camp before he did at the Santiago Bernabeu. So like our entire group like railed on him saying, I never knew you were a closeted Barca fan. Like about time your true colors. He's like, what are you talking about? And we're like, looks like you had a Freudian slip on that one, my guy.
Yeah, I actually was thinking today, I haven't even seen San Siro yet. I should go before they tear it down.
I know. I can't believe that's going to happen. I'm surprised they didn't preserve it. But all right, so Dave says at least I get my feeling away this weekend. Turkey on deck. Is there a Canadian turkey? Because you guys have like Canadian bacon.
I mean, the fake Canadian Thanksgiving, it makes me think they should be eating chicken. It's like a fake turkey. Like I just imagine everything is like 1 degree away from what it should be.
Wouldn't that be Canadian geese or goose instead of
Yeah, they're
turkey?
eating Canadian goose. That's funny. I wonder if they're good.
Apparently, it is a delicacy because people do hunt them. Well, I mean, I live in Michigan, so we hunt anything that walks. And then he says, and him, no holds barred. Bone says, eat for both of us.
He's
Dave,
eating his feelings after today's game.
yeah, Dave's stress eating. So guys, if you hear him or if you see him tomorrow and he's gained a couple of pounds, you know why? Stress eating because of the game. Oh, apple pie, sweet potato pie. Oh my, oh my. All right, Dave. Way to flex on us there, buddy. Maybe I should just call you in right now and just have you just like flex all the food that you're eating. And then Dave says, yes, we can hunt goose. I have. It's not that great. Oh, that's interesting.
Well, I guess a Canadian eating a Canadian goose is like us hunting a bald eagle.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Alrighty. Well, I guess I say we call it a night. I think we've hashed out a couple of things. We didn't go full Allegri rant like a lot of folks do. I think we looked at it objectively. I think we looked at it. I don't want to say that we did the show for the vibes per se, but I think we had that conversation where we were able to take, hey, some things that we didn't like, some things that we saw that are potentially good enough, and we didn't throw Vlahovic under an 18-wheel semi-truck like a lot of folks have been doing recently.
Yeah. What a time to be barely alive.
I know. And KB's got the right attitude. He's got that Fino alla fine Mamba mentality, Fino alla fila mentality right there. But all right, guys, I'm going to hit the music. I'll do the old daydreaming thing. It'd be funny if I tricked you guys and played like a random soundbite just to mess with y'all. But we're going to do it. Thanks to Weston for hopping on again. You guys will see Dave tomorrow. He'll be back with some FIFA, and then we'll be doing some Maccabi Haifa pre-games on Monday, I think. Yeah. And then I may do a watch along for Maccabi Haifa. I'm not sure. I got to see how my schedule works. And I believe it was KB and some other folks in the chat that wanted me to do a watch along with my dad. I ran the pitch to Papa Dash, and Papa Dash says he's down. So we just gotta see how his schedule pops up. So we'll see how that works, and we'll get him there. But any final thoughts, Weston? Any social plugs you want to plug in, or is it just cut to the music? Cut to the music.
That's it for me. I'll let you do your thing.
Alrighty. Well, all right, guys. I'm gonna throw down this good old brand over here. We're absolutely upset and disappointed. No, I'm not gonna touch my liquor cabinet behind me, for those of you that are asking. So, no, we don't do that here at Turin Giants. But set the tone a little bit so I can do my ASMR. But anyways, everybody, Vino alla fine. Take a long nap. Maybe some bourbon and some whiskey. I don't know. Some limoncello. It'll put some hair on your chest, allegedly. But in all regards, guys, we'll see you tomorrow at 10 for the FIFA stream, and then next week when we do some Maccabi Haifa, pre and post games, possibly a watch along, and then we're going to be doing some Derby stuff for the Derby de Limone for Torino, and some more FIFA stuff. So thanks, everybody. Make sure you do the old housekeeping thingamadoodle. Like the video if you're a non-subscriber that finally stumbled on our page via YouTube Shorts or whatever. Shoot us a sub. Thanks a lot. Helps us out a lot. Appreciate it. And other than that, guys, have a great weekend. We'll see you on the next one.
Forza Juve.